Hey everybody, welcome to the Alone series where we're watching every episode and doing live commentary on the episodes of History Channel's Alone. We are on season 1, episode 3. If you're following along, for reasons, copyright laws and restrictions on YouTube, I'm not allowed to stream the video while making commentary on it until I find a better solution, because I've tried that and had all my videos blocked. So I've had to go back and recreate the content, which is oodles of fun. But gonna go ahead and watch this. You guys can watch this on Amazon Prime. If you have Prime, it's free. You don't have to pay for it. Or you can also go, if you have different TV services that are accepted, and go watch it on History Channel's Alone page, which is linked in the description below. If you guys like this, please like and subscribe. Share the channel with your friends. We're going to be doing a bunch of different things, not just these videos. These videos are just part of a series. I love Alone on the History Channel. I've loved it ever since I got introduced to it and have watched every season. I wanted to go back and watch them all and just kind of give my own personal slant on what people are doing and my opinions. These are my opinions. If they offend anybody, I'll apologize as a blanket apology, but I kind of don't care. I'm just out to have fun and just to do this. It gives me an excuse to watch the series again, is a lot of what it is. So feel free to argue with me in the comments. Post whatever you think, your likes, your feelings and opinions. I'd love to hear from anybody. So we're going to go ahead and start playing episode 3. It's called The Talons of Fear. So we've lost 2 people. We lost Josh to the bear on day 1. Day 2, Chris went out, I think. I'm pretty sure this is Chris. Chris went out because wolves got behind him. He's got a fear of dogs and a fear of being attacked by wolves, so he backed out there. So now we're going to move in. Joe's in some pretty dire straits. He just lost his ferro rod, which is the thing that starts fire. It's one of these guys right here. You strike it and it makes sparks. It's how they're starting most of their fires. I don't think he's counted out. I mean, right now, Joe's got a chance. He could still do a friction fire. He lost his ferro rod after he made a fire. So he's got a fire currently based on the video we were watching. And, he can dry out wood, so he's got wood that's dry enough to do a friction fire with. If he uses big enough wood and big logs, he can actually keep a fire going for hours. There's a few different techniques he could do. There's one where you build 2 stands and lay logs up the stands, and you put the fire in the middle so you can move the fire, transfer it there, and then those logs burn. And as they burn, and once they fully burn out, then they just kind of move together and keep burning, and the other logs roll down, and you can get like a 14, 16-hour fire out of them. So I don't think it's anything he's counted out on yet. He does look like he's counting himself out if he can't figure out something. So, I hope he stays in. It's just a matter of problem solving and what can you do. It looks like everybody's been able to find fresh water and make a fire and shelter. Joe moved. Mitch moved. I don't think anybody else has yet. Everybody else seems to be staying in their relative locations. Mitch didn't have any water where he was, so he had to paddle all his stuff across in a little makeshift round coracle boat built of sticks. I'm still amazed he got that thing across there, but he did what he could. So, all right, we've already started the episode, so if you want to watch along, go right ahead. They've got the little previously on Alone section where they're kind of running through everything. So Chris took out because he's too scared of the wolves. The wild animals were certainly a concern, and the funny part is the wild animals take people out quicker because just for mental aspects. Once you get that mental aspect of being of the predators, I think the people who are scared of the predators are gone. I don't know. We'll see what happens here, but the fear of the animals it's brutal. So, and a lot of them, the guys who left chose not to have weapons. They didn't have bows. They didn't have any type of primitive weapons with them to protect themselves. They didn't make anything to protect themselves. So, it can be a problem. So they're still doing the previous season, this intro. So right now they're zooming back into Vancouver Island. So it's day 4 still, back where we were on our last episode. 8 little Indians remaining. That's kind of a reference to the old book, 10 Little Indians, where people keep keep dying and falling down until there's one left. So they're going back to Alan. Alan's talking about the change he's had in time perception. And this is true. I mean, the tides are ways you keep track of time, and the sun moving across the sky. You no longer worry about what time is it. Is it 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock? You just kind of learn high tide, low tide. It reminds me of the 1980s film The Gods Must Be Crazy. They talk about in the Kalahari out in the desert, it can be Tuesday or Sunday or whatever day you want it to be because it doesn't matter. Every day's the same. So Alan's out foraging. Alan's had a pretty good luck of things. So he found a big banana slug, which nasty, but it's good protein. He's out on the beach and found himself some kelp. Kelp is good for a couple of things. It'll give him some sea salt, some electrolytes. It'll give him some various vitamins that he's going to need to keep going. I mean, he goes, I don't like a lot of, he doesn't know a lot of stuff about kelp or things like that. He's just figuring it out as he goes. So they're saying here, bull kelp is the fastest growing plant in the world and grows 7 feet a day. Can you imagine that? A whole plant growing 7 feet in a single day? That's insane. But the nice part is that's actually sustainable for him. So it's something you could harvest a lot of it and it would grow back very, very quickly. Where like mushrooms, things like that, they're ready when they're ready, but that's it. So it's got vitamin A, B complex, C, D, and K. That's pretty good. So, and that gives him some roughage, so that's good. So now they zoom back to his life and his wife. So he says he's not competing against other people, he's competing against himself, and I think that's true. I mean, a lot of this survival, these guys are going out because of their own fears. They quit because they couldn't keep their fears in their heads in. What I think is interesting here is he's sharpening his knife on his sheath. He actually has a leather sheath, and he's using his leather sheath as a strop to make sure his knife maintains that edge. So that's really good. He's trying a few different things. I don't know what he's eating now. But I mean, he's foraging already. He's got his food, he's got his water, or he's got water, he's got shelter. He's identified a couple food sources. He's sitting pretty sweet. So now I moved over to Lucas. So Lucas is planning, he wants to build a cabin. He's really building it. Wow. So he's cutting down a tree that's got to be 12, 13 inches or bigger around. Like, that's a big damn tree that he's cutting down right now. My concern about that is how much energy and effort he's expending into this. I mean, to drop a tree that big is a lot of work. This is something Sean Kelly, Corporal Kelly on Corporal's Corner talked about. And I think is definitely something a lot of these guys aren't doing. They're spending a lot of time sawing trees, getting nice square firewood. If you get the little small stuff that's 3-4 inches, you can get that between a couple trees, or if the tree has a Y, you stick it in between, and you can leverage your body weight and pull and just snap off the firewood or the pieces however long you want them to be. And so looking at this, he's putting so much effort into having these big foot-thick walls. Even he just goes, wow, that was a lot of work. That's really the problem looking at this. I mean, I'm looking at this, and he's dropping a bunch of trees that are a lot of work and a lot of calories, and I don't think he's got the energy or the food sources. He's he's so focused on trying to get this cabin up that, I mean, I'm wondering what he's doing for food and calories, because he's a skinny guy. That's the biggest thing about him, is there's not a lot of calories on that dude. He's pretty skinny. There's some of the others. Alan's a little bit bigger. He's not huge, but he's bigger, so he's got a little bit extra fat on him. Sam definitely does. I mean, so these are guys that once they get to where their body's burning their fat for energy, they can go a lot longer. But this dude's already freaking skinny, and this log he's building. The biggest thing with this log is he's carrying it on his shoulder, and he seems to be doing okay. But it's a good opportunity for an injury that's going to take you out. That'd be my concern. Is, man, what if you pulled a muscle or hurt your back or your neck, or the log fell over and trapped you? Like, some bad shit could go down with what he's trying to do. Joe looks sad. He goes, I mean, he got his fire. He's got everything. So this is the thing about like fire steels, where he lost it. He has it separate and in its own little container. He's not gonna be able to find it like that. See, he's getting too hard on himself, and he's beating himself up over it instead of thinking, okay, what can I do to fix this? He's got a little fire behind him. You can actually see the fire's actually dried out the log where he has the fire. So if he can keep it going, he can do it. And it's funny, he goes, you can't work because the wood's soaked, but he's already drying out this log his fire's next to him. But this is a lesson. If you got something that's super important, like a fire steel, this one's got a little ring on it. It actually came with a hole, and most fire steels do. They come with a hole where you can run a lanyard or a paracord through. So one of the first things I would have done is take either some fishing line or a piece of paracord or string and tie it so it sits around here. I've actually got another one upstairs that I do have that, and I usually wear it like that. I wear it underneath my shirt, or sometimes on top, just depending on how I'm feeling that day. But just wearing it underneath so it keeps and just stays there. So when you take it off, you use it, put it back on your neck. If you set it somewhere, nature's cruel. You put something somewhere and go to come back, it can be gone from where you thought you put it real quick. I mean, it's 4 days in. And like I said at the beginning of the video, he's got options here. There's things he can do to maintain a fire. I mean, with one of those log setups, you can set up the big, long burning logs, and that thing will burn for 15, 16 hours, maybe longer, without you having to tend it or do anything, because it just keeps self-feeding. As the two main logs burn out, the next logs roll down in and burn. And again, I think right here it comes down to mentality. He started in a bad spot. He moved over to a better one. And through carelessness, he lost his fire steel. And rather than do a little problem solving and try to think of something he could do to stay longer, he's calling it quits. I don't blame him. I mean, it can be hard. You get stuck in your mental space, and your mental space is what's taking you out in all these. There's something to survival of the fittest. And it's not survival of the fittest. That's an inaccurate description of Darwin's theories. It's survival of the person who's most adaptable. So in a situation like this, you lose your fire steel, what can you do to adapt? And if you don't think through that adaptation, you don't think through what else can I do to get away with this, you just think, I can't do it, I'm done. That'll get you. And I think part of this is it's so easy for them to tap out. It's a hard thing to do, but I mean, if this was true survival, he'd have to do something. That's the problem here, is he has the ability and the opportunity to just say, I'm done. To just go, take me home. I want to go back home and be comfortable, do this and that. If you get the attitude of I'm not going home, unless they tell me I'm going home. Like you don't make that phone call unless you're like seriously hurt or wounded. But in a situation like this, if you can, and even he kind of, I mean, this is his attitude. I lost this. What am I doing out here? That mentality really gripes on you, and it's hard. I'm not belittling Joe at all, but it absolutely is that attitude. If you can find other ways around this, that's. I mean, he's not the first person. It's funny. He goes, I think I'm the first person to tap out. He has no idea 2 guys bit it in the first 2 days. So he was not the first guy to tap. And I think that's probably why he took it hard. I think he's thinking, I'm the first guy out. I got taken out by a stupid mistake. And in reality, that's just not the case. The other guy's already tapped out of fear. He tapped out over losing the tool, which again just becomes a standpoint of, do you adapt or do you quit? So, all right, now they're back over to Sam. Sam's going to build a shelter because he wants to get away from his little one, and that's fine. What's interesting is the log he's cutting down is, again, that 4 to 5 inch range. It's about this big, a little bit easier to carry, lighter. He's able to do stuff faster. He makes a lot of jokes, so he's trying to talk like a Canadian because they're in Vancouver. But if I'm looking at what he's doing for building this little shelter, he didn't expend a lot of energy carrying those logs. He cut them down quicker. He's already got a couple feet worth of this log. You look at him and he's got that going up a lot faster, which I think is the problem the other guy's got. Sam's got his wife who's pregnant at home. That's rough, man. I mean, depending on how far along she is, if he's out there long enough, he'd miss the birth of his kid. And that's rough. I mean, it could be anything. Things could go wrong with the baby. There's a whole lot for him to be mentally struggling with. But I mean, at the same time, at his young age with his wife and his newborn on the way, $500,000 goes a long, long way. I did the math, and if you were renting in a place for, I don't know, $1,000, let's say $2,000 a month, which is a real nice house, which is a nice house. It's somewhere to give you a place to be. $500,000 to pay your rent for 20 years. So, I mean, to not have to pay that, if that's all you did with it, and then you just lived your life and had your job, like, that takes care of your rent. That's a big deal. So he is still going with an A-frame for the roof, which I get it. That's what all modern roofs look like. But to me, it's just problematic. So move back to Wayne. Wayne's also bringing up his concerns about the animals, that it's in his head. So he just found a bird that was in the ocean. I don't know. You find a bird that's been floating in the water. You don't know how long it's been floating. I mean, the water would keep it cold. It's the ocean, so it'd keep it cold like a refrigerator. But it's... So he's not going to eat it, and it's funny because he goes, they can have parasites and disease, but you can cook it. If you cook, you can cook out most of the viruses and parasites in a bird. So, I mean, he really probably could cook it, but I don't know. He wants to get rid of it. It's stinking. I think it's probably rotten. I mean, you don't know how long it died and was in the water before it swept up. So he's going to move it out somewhere, because that's smart. I mean, if it's close by, a bear could come in, and that's problematic. So he hasn't spotted any bears across the shores at him, but that doesn't mean they're not behind him up in the woods. So all right, they moved back over to Lucas in his cabin. I mean, you look at these gigantic trees he's cutting down. So he's worried about the cold, so he's trying to make this big structure. And I guess with this being the first season, they didn't know how long they were going to be out here for. I mean, theoretically, it could go for a year. The longest anybody's ever done alone has been 87 days, so 3 months. I don't think it was really worth building that big of a cabin. So he's trying to do cabin because he wants to do a fireplace. So what he's trying to do is see if he can make an indoor fireplace. That's a whole lot of work to do anyways. And again, I think his plans are calorically unwise. So he's now saying his cabin idea is not going to work and all this stuff he just did is useless. He just burned a crap ton of calories for nothing. It's just funny because I see those logs that he's got and I'm going, well, build a pit house. You build a pit house, that's a lot of work and solid work to put one up. But you get a pit house up, you can have a fire in the center column. You're not at risk of burning anything down because you leave the top end open. And if you want to look up what pit houses are, they're pretty fascinating. But man, he really put a lot of effort and energy and time into cutting down those logs, and now I guess he's done with that and moving on. That can be brutal to a guy's psyche. And again, this whole thing's a mental game. It's so 7 little Indians. So we've lost Chris, Josh, and Joe. They're moving back over to Wayne. So Wayne's looking for a little bit more of a permanent place than where he's currently got shelter. His current shelter's pretty crappy. It's pretty small. And it's weird that he goes, it's supposed to rain for the next 5 days. How would he know that? Like, are they getting weather reports coming in from I don't know if they're getting reports from the guys via sat phone or whatever, but he's in this little tiny shelter. When you look at it, it's right up close on him. And now in day 2, he's showing, the incoming tide is almost in his camp. That's not good. He's definitely too close to the water. He needs to go find some place, but I thought I saw him earlier around a deadfall that would have been great for a little campsite. Right there, he's got another tree he's got these giant trees that he's got a bit of a hangover. So right now I'm looking right here, he's got a good shelter. And it's funny because he's going, well, I can do it, but there's a bear path. There's going to be bear paths anywhere you go. But to be honest, when I'm looking at this guy, I think, there's bear everywhere. If you keep a fire at night and they're able to keep the fire all through the night, I think the fire would keep the bears away and make them be a little bit more skittish. At least that's just my opinion. And then they'd probably start using different trails. Usually when a human moves into an area, they're loud, they're noisy, they're creating fire and smoke. Normally the animals will change their paths and start looking for other areas and abandon those trails. Which sucks if you're hunting because it means you got to go pretty far to get to the game. But I think it's closer where he can be. So it looks like he's making a little bit of bed to keep him up and off the ground. It's still, he's got this big canvas tent. And again, because he doesn't have it tarped out and straight, it's all curved. He doesn't have a lot of headroom in there. It's going to be very compact and claustrophobic, which is going to bother me. He did pick a good spot from an aspect of he's got the only way in easily is through the front. All behind him's all brush, and so that does make a good warning trap that something's there. You don't know if it's a bear or a deer or even a mouse. Like a mouse or a rabbit can make noise at night and scare the hell out of you. So I don't know. I mean, when I look at this stuff, it's actually able to tell time by using your hand. If I guess as the sun sets, it's actually 15 minutes per finger, which is interesting. I was thinking about this. You could actually be able to tell time from farther away than just right near the sunset. And the main reason for that is if you use your arm as a fulcrum, because it's a ball and socket joint, if you're in here, you've got room for error. But if you lock your arm out, it gives you a perfect circle because your arm's going to be the same length. You're rotating at a singular point, and you could measure pretty much almost the entire day. And so I think that actually gives him a pretty good chance of being able to do that. I mean, it's pretty interesting to see, what he's got there. So Brandt's talking about the problem of talking to the camera and talking about everything that you're doing. I mean, man, that can be really, really brutal. I mean, when you're really looking at talking about this stuff, you would think that talking about things would help people, but in reality, that's just not the case. I mean, when you're really looking at all these problems that they talk about their failures, this and that's been wearing them down. That can really, really grate on you. I mean, that can just be brutal, to be honest. I mean, I absolutely think that's brutal. I don't know that I could do that. I would think that's just so much to swallow and deal with. It's a lot. It's a lot to handle. It's a lot to struggle with. And I don't know. So Alan's still scrounging for firewood and for everything. It seems like he's hanging in there a bit. I mean, he says he thinks about home. That's the one thing that, to be honest, it's hard not to do. But I think that's going to be one of the other things. Again, he said it before he came out that it all comes down to your mentality. It comes down to what's in your head, what's eating at you. And right now, what's eating him is his family. That's going to be brutal. So move back over to Wayne. Oh, shit. Wayne got a close encounter of a third kind. Just walked within like 15, 20 feet of a black bear late at night in the dark. Yeah, I'd be swearing too. That was really, really freaking close. So he's like, I was charged by a bear. And again, this is what we were talking about, that the only way a black bear is really gonna come at you is if you startle it or they're really, really hungry. And in this case, he startled it because it's out in the dark. And it's funny because you already startled it. And if you've already startled it and walked up on it like that and you're in its territory, hey, bear's not going to work. He did the smart thing to back out and get the hell out of there. I mean, he's worried the bear's out there looking for him. I don't know if the bear will come for him or not. I mean, he got away from it. Usually wildlife goes back to doing what they're going to do, but he was really, really close to it. So the game trails picked him up. Game trail just picked up the bear. I mean, I can see it out. It's out there. It doesn't look like it's pissed off, like it's charging and angry or roaring or anything. I think it's more wondering what the hell was that? And just the impression I have looking at these, it looks like the bear is just looking around. But it's late, he got really, really close. And looking at this video, I mean, he was far away from it, which makes me wonder what the hell was he doing out there in the middle of the night? It's dark. He's away from his camp, away from his fire. And when you look at his shelter, I don't even see a fire outside of his shelter, so it looks like he doesn't have a fire. And that's unnerving because you're sitting there in the dark with just your camera and the light from your camera to try to deal with things. I mean, if you don't have a fire there to help, the fire would help keep the bear back more. So he called for help. What's interesting is I think they have to push a button to call for help. He just freaked out. I mean, it's a tense situation he's in, and then the phone rings, and that's brutal. So they're calling. They call out to talk for help and stuff if they need, and if they ask for help, if they want somebody to come get them or to come help them out, they're done. They tap out. So it surprises me, and another animal takes another one. Wayne's out. I mean, I don't blame him. His encounter with the bear was much more serious. I mean, that bear could have charged him fully, could have ran him down probably. I mean, the bear didn't run him down, which tells me the bear wasn't pissed enough to kill him without reason. I mean, the way he was indicating it looked more like it was looking for. It was more just wanting him to get the hell out of there. So they're driving out to go get him. They dropped him off by boat, but I guess for whatever reason they don't want to. People aren't willing to go out there at night. So these trucks are all driving out to go get him. That's got to be rough for these guys. I mean, you think about what these guys are doing. They're going through the bushes in the dark to go try to find this guy with a GPS marker, because I think they all have GPS markers on their gear and stuff. So they're going to go try to locate him. But it's 3 hours, so Wayne has to sit here potentially with this bear. The game camera just picked him up nearby. The problem is Wayne's not going to be able to see what's going on, and there's no fire there for him to check it out. I mean, I'm looking at what this bear's doing, the bear's body language. The bear's more checking out the neighborhood. And again, it really becomes a question. The bear's not snarling. He's not spitting. He doesn't look angry. I think he was more surprised that somebody walked up on him and he's trying to figure out who the hell's in his backyard. And looking at this, he just looks like he's there, And again, with these little shelters where they swoop in like that, that bear can come smelling and looking for it, and it's going to be right here, and that's going to be a hell of a lot scarier. One of the things Joe did with his A-frame is his A-frame came out pretty good. So he had a couple of feet between him and the wall. That kind of gives some extra barrier, that gives you some move to room. It gives you some chance. I mean, these rescue teams are worried about coming and getting them. So, I mean, where they're headed basically out in no man's land. That's where they dropped them off, is far away. And then they got to hack through the brush to try to find them. Again, the dude's going, all he's got is the tarp and pepper spray. Everybody'd rather have a rifle. If you had a rifle, this would be a lot easier to survive out there, but there's a lot of things he could do here. I mean, you could have even with the flare, using the flare to do the fire. It's strange he didn't have a fire and he went out into the dark without a fire. To me, that was just, why would you go out into the dark to walk into a bear? I mean, when you think about it, most predators are nocturnal. Bears are active at night. Wolves are active at night. Mountain lions are active at night. When it's nighttime, it's time for a fire, hunker down, and just wait, basically. So all the rescue teams have bear bait or bear spray and flares. I mean, they're basically putting their lives at risk of the same thing, of trying to get out to him and hiking through these woods. I mean, you look, they're bushwhacking. There's not trails they can follow out there. It's pretty rough going to just get out there. And yes, he hasn't called back in, so they're trying to hurry, but it's a 3-hour hike for them to try to find out how to get over to his GPS marker. So they just got a message that they haven't heard from him in 40 minutes. That could be either way. He's just sitting there, or he's bear bait. I mean, that's the scary reality of where he's at. It's 2 a.m. Jeez. So they moved away from Wayne over to Allen. I love Allen's shelter. Allen's shelter is a lean in with like a wall internal, and he's actually used a lot of natural materials, I think, covering his tarp to add for some water shedding, but it also helps disguise his shelter. Again, he keeps talking about missing home, and he does know he can't dwell on it, so that's good for him. But sad part is none of these guys know what's going on with Wayne. They don't have a clue. They're all just kind of out. I love this shelter Sam's got. He's got a raised bed underneath. He's got firewood stored. See, that's brilliant because, again, like Joe was saying, everything's wet. All the firewood's wet. And this was one of the things I was saying. By putting that firewood underneath and keeping his shelter warm, you can actually dry out the firewood, which would give you the opportunity for a friction fire. I mean, if you can't get one for maybe a couple of days, then maybe I would call it quits. But so I think everybody's just sitting here talking about their thoughts and what they're thinking about. And the woods gives you time. I mean, having campfires, having a camp gives you time to think about everything you need to think about. But so this guy's talking about how much is the time away from your family worth? Is it worth $500,000? And again, when we boil it down to, if you were renting a place for $2,000 a month, pays your rent for 20 years, I think 2-3 months away from your family is worth it. I mean, my wife and I have made more sacrifices than that in the past for being away from each other. Okay, so they're back within the... So it's interesting. I guess Wayne does have a fire, but he has his fire away from his tent. Well, see, that's a hard problem because that's going to make his fire, like, his fire is just his protection, his ability to see the bear coming. And he doesn't have that near his tent. I mean, there's reasons for that. If he's cooking food, you want to cook food away from your tent. But I'd try to maintain 2 fires if you can. All right, so they got eyes on him with the flare. That is a bright flare. So I said you can see a flare for up to 3 miles. So they're still ways out from him, but they're getting closer to come getting him. So in the sucky part is they all hike 3 hours into there. For them to get him out, they all got to hike 3 hours back out with all the gear, or they got to wait until morning anyways. So see, that's the thing. Like, I don't think those dudes scared that bear off. The bear left anyways, and they might not have come got it until morning. You probably would have been fine the next day. Move your camp if you need to, but I don't know. The animals get him again. I mean, that's the thing when you really think about the frontiersmen and the pioneers and people who traveled across the woods and the mountain men. They didn't have the opportunity to call for help and have somebody come pick them up in a boat or a helicopter. You had to deal with the animals. You had a bear walk in up and on you. You just had to deal with it. And so it's interesting. And again, the ease with which they can quit, I think sometimes makes it a lot easier for this mentality of, screw it, I'm going home. That really gets in your way. So Lucas's fire just about went out on him. I mean, that can be scary. You definitely got to do it. My concern about what he just said is he said he had to go saw some wood. You know, that's if it's time to go to bed, make sure you got extra firewood lying around so you can wake up if the fire's dying down, you just throw wood on top of it. If you got to go saw wood in the middle of the night, again, you're out near the animals. It's a lot scarier to do it that way. So I think that's an unfortunate short-sightedness. Sam did that. I mean, you look at Sam's shelter. Sam had firewood stored, and it was underneath him, so he literally has to wake up, grab it, toss it on the fire, and he keeps his fire going all night and can go back to sleep for a few hours. Like, that's a pretty good deal. So the rain's coming down a lot on Lucas. So what's interesting is these canvases. Again, I mentioned this with Mitch, I think, that it doesn't look like they oiled the canvases or waterproofed them before they brought them out. So he doesn't have a lot in the way of water retention. The biggest thing that's affecting him is that he's got that roof out flat. And while that's nice and gives him some nice dry area where his fire and where everything is, it also means the water sits on that and absorbs through and drips through. So they switched over to Sam now. So Sam's talking about, again, these guys are all talking about that they're thinking. This reminds me of this story I heard, actually at my brother's college graduation by this Navy SEAL. And he was saying, there's a part in SEAL training during Hell Week when they're going through the hardest parts of things. The time when most of these guys quit is when their only task is to stand on the beach and watch the sunset. And you hear over and over these guys ringing this bell, and ringing the bell is the sign you quit. And the reason was they start thinking about the night ahead and what's coming. Do I have the ability to do it? I'm not going to be able to endure the night. I don't want to. I'm just going to tap out now and go home. And in reality, they didn't quit because the task they were dealing with was hard. They quit because their minds got in their way. If they had just kept their minds out of it and focused on the joy of the sunset, focused on the task at hand, which was stand here and watch the sunset, they wouldn't quit. It's getting in your head and your mentality, and that's to Sam's point and to Alan's here now. Alan's talking from in his shelter. I mean, when it's raining a lot, you don't want to get out in the rain and get wet. So they're stuck in these little small shelters. They're not a whole lot to do. You're just thinking through everything. It's a lot to think. Unless you can keep yourself busy, whether it's making stuff, carving spoons, making plans for what you're going to do next and thinking through things. I mean, you got to be careful. The more you, Alan's still talking about thinking about back home, and that's the more you think about it, the more you miss it, and that can be just the reason you need to go home. Especially again, where it's so easy. If these guys were traveling and had to hike their way back home, you can miss your family all you want, but you're going to be stuck out there. And so for here, the ease of their ability to actually leave and just be able to go home to their families at this call of the button and press a button, call, and I want to go home. It really makes it a mental game because you don't have the opportunity to be forced to stay and be forced to toughen up and just deal with it. You have the opportunity to quit, and that opportunity to quit makes it that much more tempting. So, all right, well, that wraps up season 1, episode 3, The Talons of Fear. We lost 2 guys in this episode. We lost Joe, and then we lost Wayne. Joe lost his tool. Wayne was the third person to go as a result of an animal. And I mean, I don't blame Wayne. When you really look at Wayne's situation, to be honest, I really don't blame him for tapping out the way he did. That bear was pretty close to him. There's other things he could have maybe done or had things go better for him, but in the end, I think he probably he might have made the right call to tap out there. That was a hard situation to tap out in because he did have the bear charge him, which is a little bit different than, hearing the wolves in the distance or having a mama bear and her cubs come check out and then take off the moment you say, hey, bear. Like, he tried to do the hey, bear and scare the bear off, and the bear didn't stop. So that's a little bit different. So I mean, that wraps episode 3. So please, if you guys like this, if you disliked it, leave a comment below. Tell me why. Share the video if you want to. Please subscribe to the channel. We're going to be doing a lot of videos. This isn't the only thing we do. This is just one I did for fun. It's an excuse for me to go back and watch all the Alone episodes again because I love this show. I love the contestants on it. I feel like it's a pretty authentic show. There's not producers out there. There's not people setting up drama. This is what these guys experience because they film it all themselves. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Please let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you want to watch Alone, there's a link below, or you can go on Amazon Prime and watch the whole seasons as well. Again, thank you, everybody. Have a great day.